I'm about to show you 6 of the most compelling Bigfoot photographs ever captured, photos that remain unexplained to this day, despite being scrutinized by experts. We'll take a deep dive into exactly why I feel the evidence supports the idea that these photos are 100% authentic, not hoaxes. Then you can decide for yourself. Number 1. Alberta Trail Cam photo, 2012. This photo was taken in 2012 by a trapper in rural Alberta, Canada. The figure is sitting in a patch of low forest and foliage, appears to be quite relaxed, with proportions that are clearly not human, but closer to human proportions than what skeptics theorize this is, which is a bear. Both grizzly bears and black bears are native to Alberta, but a few details about this photo make the bear explanation seem quite unlikely in my mind. The main one being the arm on the left-hand side of the image. This is a large muscular arm with what appears to be a visibly flexing tricep muscle under the coarse reddish-brown fur towards the upper part of the arm. Getting down lower, you see what looks like a locked elbow and then the gentle swell of the creature's forearm muscle as the arm and wrist transition into the greenery and foliage that the creature is sitting in. We also have what appear to be wide shoulders, viewed from the back of course, and a conical head with essentially no neck, which is a detail that is very commonly reported in Sasquatch sightings. You often hear about that conical, often trapezoid-shaped head that is sitting on top of shoulders with no neck to bridge the gap between head and shoulders. That's what we appear to be seeing here. Again, nothing about these shoulders or the head shape says bear to me, whether black bear or grizzly bear, neither of them are shaped like this. We can't see the right-hand arm very well, but it is sort of implied by the position of what looks like the right shoulder. And to the right-hand side of the image, we see what looks like a leg, bent somewhat, maybe at a 100-degree angle or so, out in front of the creature. It basically looks like it's sitting on its butt, leaning back on its arms, which are locked, and relaxing in this shrubbery and foliage. Another theory from skeptics is that this is just a man in a ghillie suit, and although it's closer in proportion to humans than to any bear species I'm aware of, it's not that close. The long, muscular arms, the coarse reddish-brown fur, the complete absence of neck. This doesn't look like any ghillie suit I've ever seen. It's also been analyzed by experts who estimate that if this creature were standing, it would be at least 7 feet tall. I don't know many men that big, and I don't know many ghillie suits that come in that size. It was apparently captured by an automated trail cam, so there's no photographer behind the lens, which further bolsters the idea that it wasn't a staged image. The distance, the stillness, and the composition point to a moment of chance that's pretty hard to dismiss if you ask me. Number 2, the Jacobs Trail Cam series, 2007. Captured on September the 16th, 2007 in the Allegheny National Forest of Pennsylvania, this series of images were taken by the Jacobs family's Bushnell Trail Cam. You can see that there's a creature here bent over, kind of in mid-stride on all fours, which at first glance you might think to be a thinner than average bear. But one of their images actually captures a bear cub, 2 bear cubs in fact, one of which is pretty much in the same spot that this strange figure is. And you can see that the shape and proportions of the bear versus the anomalous creature are very different. There are also comparisons that have been done between this figure and actual great apes like chimpanzees. And what you see is that the two are actually very similar. In fact, the long arm visible on the left-hand side of the image and the splayed, shorter legs are incredibly similar in proportions to chimpanzees. And chimpanzees are known to get into this position of kind of halfway between quadrupedal and bipedal movement when they're picking something up from the ground, a piece of food, say. The bent upper back and nearly invisible head is also another trademark position that chimpanzees and other great apes take. So the question is, what would a chimp or a great ape of another sort be doing in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania? Now, the Pennsylvania Game Commission said that this was likely a mangy bear, but again, bears just don't have long limbs like that, and they don't bend at the waist or walk in this manner. The limb ratios here are much closer to what we'd expect from a hominin than any known North American mammal. There's also a second image of the creature captured several seconds later, where it's bent even further at the waist and back, bent almost double in fact, and this further cements the idea that this couldn't be a bear. This is not the sort of contorted position that bears can get into, especially with their bulk around their midsection. Great apes, on the other hand, like chimps, can and do get into positions like this. But of course, there are no great apes native to North America that are accepted by mainstream science. Number 3, the Florida skunk ape photos, 2000. Taken on July 8th of 2000, these two images were mailed anonymously to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department in Florida. They're now known as the Myakka Skunk Ape photos. The photos apparently came with a handwritten letter from an elderly woman claiming that this creature had been stealing apples from her backyard every night. She feared it might be dangerous, so she snapped these photos, initially thinking that it was a human thief. She couldn't see very well in the dark. She snapped these photos from her porch one night when she heard what had been stealing her apples returning and making some noises in the foliage, and this is what it turned out to be, apparently. The creature is, of course, partially obscured by palmettos, but it clearly has a wide, ape-like face, a massive jawline, and the strange thing here, it's got forward-set eyes reflecting with eye shine from the flash of her camera. Now, it's been theorized by many people, including apparently the woman's own husband, and more on that later, that this was an escaped orangutan, got away from a zoo, or perhaps someone was keeping an orangutan as a pet, and it got away, or they let it go in the wilderness of Florida. But the eye shine really throws a wrench into that theory, for the simple reason that neither orangutans nor any other great ape have eye shine. Other creatures do, like dogs and cats and many others, but great apes don't. At least known and classified great apes don't have eye shine. The eye shine strongly suggests an anomalous primate species that we haven't classified, that has features that don't align with the features we know about in classified apes. Unlike a bear, of course, the creature does not have a protruding snout. The shoulder width is very noticeable. The long, shaggy fur is suggestive. The lighting matches the shadows, and the camera angle is consistent with the woman's stated position. The photo's been examined by many experts over the years, and there are no signs of manipulation or costume seams or anything else that implies a hoax upon close examination. What I find particularly compelling is the baring of the creature's teeth that you can see in both images. It appears to be showing some gums and some teeth. Now, although the eye shine isn't consistent with known ape physiology, the teeth baring is a well-known great ape behavior. They don't do it to smile or show friendliness, although it's been described by witnesses as a sort of smile. Great apes show their teeth and do a kind of smile-looking expression when they're feeling threatened or nervous, which you can imagine this creature probably was as the woman stepped off her porch and took a brightly flashing photograph of it. 2 photographs, in fact. To this day, no one's come forward claiming these photos are hoaxes, at least not with any reputable sources, and the woman's backyard apparently still backs onto several miles of dense Florida swamp. There are also many other reports in the general area where these photos were taken of what Southerners call skunk ape activity. This photo is apparently a copy of the letter that the woman sent with the 2 photographs to her local sheriff's department. The letters are kind of distorted. I only found a low-res photo online, and I tried to enhance it with a little bit of AI help, but it kind of distorted things, so just bear with me. She said, "Dear Sir or Madam, enclosed, please find some photos I took in late September or early October of 2000. My husband says he thinks it is an orangutan. Is someone missing an orangutan? It is hard to judge from the photos how big this orangutan really is. It is in the crouching position in the middle of standing up from where it was sitting. It froze as soon as the flash went off. I didn't even see it as I took the first picture because it was too dark. As soon as the flash went off for the second time, it stood up and started to move. I then heard the orangutan walk off into the bushes. From where I was standing, I judge it being about 6.5 to 7 feet tall in a kneeling position. Now that's particularly interesting. 6.5 to 7 feet tall would be tall if it was standing upright, but this woman is saying that's how tall it was when it was kneeling. This thing must have been huge. As soon as I realized how close it was, I got back to the house. It had an awful smell that lasted well after it had left my yard. The orangutan was making deep whoomp noises. It sounded much further away than it turned out to be. If I had known it was as close to the house as it was, I wouldn't have walked up as close as I did. And she goes on from there to share a few more details about the encounter and her location. Number 4. Vermont Trail Cam photo, 2011. This bizarre photo was reportedly captured in 2011 somewhere in Vermont, and while the original photographer remains anonymous, the image gained traction when it was analyzed by Steve Kulls and others on his Blog Talk radio platform. It shows what appears to be a hunched creature with some kind of a weird mange. At least that's what I interpret those white patches on its back as being. They look like severe mange to me. It's got a primate-like skull structure and what appears to be a back, shoulders, and a head, similar to a human. Now, I'll admit, when I first saw this image, my initial thought was that it's a man in a ghillie suit, and not even a particularly high-quality one at that. But then I saw this version of the image with a man in camo kneeling in the exact same spot as the anomalous being. You can tell it's the same spot because the tree is the same. It looks like it may be a cedar tree or possibly a tamarack. And the size difference here is enormous. This looks to be an average-sized man, and you can see that the head, the back, the shoulders, everything we can see of the anomalous being on the right is far larger in proportion than the human is on the left. Now, you could say that the thing on the right is just closer to the camera, but based on the position of the camera, being closer would also place it lower in the frame. If the man on the left was closer to us, for example, close enough to simulate the size of the creature on the right, he would also be low enough in the frame that he would be mostly invisible. And that's the most compelling aspect of this for me. The creature itself looks kind of fake, to be honest. I don't know if that's supposed to be mange or reflection on the fur of its back, but the size is very strange. Now, of course, there's always the possibility that it might be photoshopped, but it seems to me that if you were going to Photoshop a fake Bigfoot into a night view trail cam image, you'd do a better job. You'd make it more convincing. The fact that this is kind of fake looking is actually in a weird way one of the most compelling points in favor of its authenticity. That and, again, the very anomalous size of the being. Jeane Heibert photos, April 2009. These 3 images were taken in April 2009 by Jeane Heibert at her cabin in Lady Evelyn Smoothwater Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada. She claimed that the creature stood still for close to 5 minutes before turning and walking back into the woods. Whatever she photographed looks to be broad-shouldered, black or dark brown in color, with long arms and what looks like a sloped forehead, although it's kind of hard to tell. The stance is rigid, but also strikes me as fairly organic. There's no obvious padding or anything that looks immediately fake about the shape of the creature. And although it's dark and hard to tell, I don't see any obvious separation of costume components. Whatever it is, it looks like one continuous form. Researcher Jason Goldring analyzed these photos and estimated the creature's height at 7.5 feet, using the nearby tree structures as reference. Now, the first 2 images are quite similar, although the second one is from further away. The third image is quite interesting because It provides a completely different view, a view of what appears to be a primate-like creature staring directly at the camera. Now, I say primate-like for a few reasons. First of all, there's a very clear conical head and a very clear heavy brow ridge of the sort we see in gorillas. There's also what looks like a flat snout, again, quite gorilla-like, and then the overall impression of width, as well as the silvery touch to the fur here and there, although that silvery effect might be due to the fact that, as it says right on this version of the image, it has been digitally brightened to make it more visible. But again, this is another case where if this were a fake, you'd expect it to be of higher quality. This is another prime example of an image that's too low in quality to be a hoax. If you were setting out to create a Bigfoot hoax image using a costume or digital manipulation or a combination of the two, again, you would make sure that it would be more convincing than this, that it wouldn't be so obscured by vegetation, that it would show more of the creature's body, more details of its face, that it wouldn't require digital brightening to see anything at all. And yet we don't see any of that. Again, in a weird way, it's unconvincing enough to be convincing. It's also quite suggestive that these three images were never pushed hard for media attention. They were quietly submitted to, I believe it was the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization for analysis and investigated from there, but the people responsible never sought media attention of any kind, and that's often a good sign. It suggests that the witness wasn't chasing notoriety or money or any other selfish gain, but simply genuinely wanted answers. Number 6. Frame 352 of the Patterson-Gimlin film, restored by Todd Gatewood. Captured on October 20th, 1967 at Bluff Creek, California by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, the Patterson-Gimlin film, as you probably know, remains the most iconic Bigfoot footage ever shot. What you're seeing now is frame 352 of that film, restored in 2024 and 2025 by professional photo archivist Todd Gatewood, who has done a full frame-by-frame restoration of the original film, which he's planning to release soon in a documentary that explains the process and shows the fully restored film in its entirety. It's going to be pretty exciting, and I highly recommend you check out Todd's channel as a side note. Todd explained that almost every version of the Patterson-Gimlin film that we've all seen is a 4th or 5th generation copy, and that's why they're so blurry and the details are very obscured. But the original footage captured a surprising amount of detail. Todd's work was done based on large format 1st generation photographs of the original film, captured with a 4x5 inch camera. That's where all this detail comes from. Todd says, quote, "Most people have only ever seen blurry 5th generation bootlegs of the original film, but when you work from the raw negatives scanned in proper uncompressed formats, it's a very different story. You can see detail down to the eyelashes." Todd's restoration uses no AI, just raw scanning and sharpening through Gaussian layering and painstaking dust and stain removal. What you're seeing here is probably better than the master itself at this point, based on Todd's painstaking work. You can see a lot of clear muscle definition, and that's the most compelling thing about this frame in my mind. The flexed calf muscle and the tendons surrounding it, the natural limb positioning, facial symmetry. There's nothing about this that looks like a man in a suit. There's also the fact that the creature has breasts, which, as has been discussed before, is not a feature that anyone in the 1960s looking to set up a Bigfoot hoax would likely include. It would have been seen as kind of weird and off-putting to consider such a detail, but in hindsight, it bolsters the authenticity of the film a whole lot. These photos alone don't prove the existence of Bigfoot definitively. I don't think any photograph could do that, but they are highly anomalous, especially when you consider the fact that they're captured by different people across decades and geographies, people who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward with what they saw and captured. So what do you think? Let me know your thoughts on these photos in the comments below, and if you want to show me extra support and contribute to future projects, I'll leave a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page in the description below. Thanks so much for watching.